What's up guys, welcome to this review of The Invisible Man, the 2020 version of The Invisible Man, in which Elisabeth Moss plays a character who tries to flee from a past relationship with someone. I'm being very vague to avoid spoilers. And basically, the past relationship comes back to haunt her in various ways. So that's pretty much all I'm going to say about the story, because I don't want to give too much away. If you've seen the trailer for this film, there are some big reveals in the trailer, some spoilers in the trailer. You can probably plot together the entire film based on the trailers. In that you can say, right, this happens at the beginning, the middle, and the end, and so on. But there are still some big revelations and huge details that aren't in the trailer, so there's plenty of reason to go see this film still. But in a nutshell, what did I think of this film? I thought it was great. Really good. This is one of the best horror films I've seen in a long time. So, it's not so much scary. There's not much in the way that's frightening. It's more the ideas that are presented and the psychological elements of this. This is a psychological horror. So the first, again, trying to avoid specifics and spoilers, but like the first hour of the film is slow burn, very psychological, very in your head mental. It wants you to get into a certain headspace. It's very tense and intense. So one of the ways that this is established is through the use of camera movements and long takes. So there are moments where the camera's just sitting there, then it'll pan across very slowly and just focus on nothing while something off camera is happening. Usually when the character's getting dressed or doing some random activity and you're just focusing on like a corridor or something. And sometimes nothing happens at all. At other times, something might happen. But every single time this happens, and it's a few times in the film, you're on the edge of your seat just thinking, right, come on, what's happening? And it's brilliant the way that it does it, and then it pans back to the focus on what's actually going on. But there are long takes in this which make you feel like it's building up to something. There are very unsteady moments in the film. The first hour, there are numerous things that reminded me a bit of like Paranormal Activity, in that how it would be, except for like the found footage element, how there would be like just camera sitting there and you're waiting for something, and the way the music builds up, the score builds up. Sometimes there's no score at all, so it's really unsettling. But yeah, really well done horror in the first hour. Then the second hour comes along and it switches a bit. Again, not going into spoilers, it's still the same. It doesn't switch to a bad thing, it actually gets better, I would say, in the second hour, because it amps things up. It becomes much more of a thriller. You start getting some of the answers and you start getting an idea of what's actually going on. And it works really well. It's constantly, the slow build up and the first hour really works to help the second hour, because now everything's on like a roller coaster. It's going, and it works all the way to the climax of the film. So I really, really like this film. The story has some key themes and messages in there. There's elements about mental health and domestic abuse and all sorts of psychological stuff. And then there's obviously the horror elements too. The way in which these are balanced out is really well done, because if you focus on one thing too much, then you might be trying to say something that's not really good, especially when you're also dealing with mental health and domestic abuse. It's like, right, if you focus on one, then you're basically saying the other is true or false. And that's a really tough situation to put it in, but it actually works really well, and they never really get the balance wrong. So the messages and themes come across really well. This is a horror film that has something to say. It's much more, there's more to this film than just trying to scare you or entertain you, and that's why it's so good. If you've seen recent like big horror flicks like Get Out or maybe even Us and It, this is very much in the same wheelhouse, in that there's more to this than the scares. But there are some surprises, twists and turns in there. I said earlier how the first hour is like very classical horror. The second hour then transitions more into thriller territory. The actual moment in which this transition happens is brilliant. And it's jaw-droppingly shocking. I did not see it coming. When I was in the cinema, there were more people in there who were like gasping, people going, oh no, and stuff like that. And that's testament to how well it's done, how well the film's acted, and how well the characters are developed, that this scene works the way it does. It's brilliant. So there's definitely some surprises and shocks and twists and turns in this film that aren't revealed in the trailer. So to move on about the lead character, of course, is Elizabeth Moss. This is a brilliant performance from her, one of her best, I would say. So she plays a character who I think us as the audience knows the answers to what everyone else is wondering. Is she crazy, or does she have some mental things going on? I'm not going to say here and there that's going on, but she does a great job of balancing it all, and the fact that it is focusing on like a domestic abuse and abusive relationship stuff that's happened in the past, the way that she's traumatized by it and that she's having to get over it and overcome things that have happened to her is really well done. So yeah, great performance by her, really relatable, likable. She feels real and believable as well. This is a horror film where there are a few instances where characters say and do things that make you go, right, but why didn't you say or do that? Why didn't you say and do this instead? And often enough the answer is because it's a horror film. There are some instances like that where you've just got to like accept it and move on, but they're never that bad. They're always slight little infractions, let's say. And that's because the characters do feel grounded, they do feel real and believable. There is like a science fiction twist to things in certain elements. I'm not going to go into spoilers again, but past incarnations of the Invisible Man have been much more like fantastical and supernatural. This one really grounds it in a way that's believable, and that helps to make it much more investable. So the characters work in this regard too. They do feel real, they do feel fully fleshed out. Elizabeth Moss, for example, then there's got like her best friends who's a cop and the daughter there. They feel like real people. And they feel like, right, these characters, you could easily just follow them on their daily activities and be entertained by what's happening there. The film doesn't do that necessarily, but the fact is these characters could stand alone. And that's all I'm going to say about the characters. So to move on about the production, it's really well directed. This is Leigh Whannell, best known for like the Saw films, the early Saw films. I think he also was involved in The Conjuring and I think like Annabelle as well. Maybe I'm wrong on that. But really well directed. I've talked about some of the camera movements. He does a great job of building tension and then constantly amping things up towards the end. This is probably his best work as a director, to be honest. The score and the soundtrack is brilliant. I would say if you can see this in like a Dolby theatre, it would be really good. I didn't see it in Dolby theatre, but I have to imagine it would work really well because sound plays such a huge part, especially when you can't see what's causing a lot of the horror. So sometimes you are just listening for audio cues and stuff like that. But the soundtrack does a good job of building the tension as well. But cinematography is very muted, very bleak because of the themes and messages. It actually works in tandem with them, makes this very grounded, very realistic as well. Across the board, this is just a great, well-made film. And in my initial tweet about this film, I said, this might be one of my new favourite horror films. Maybe that's slightly over-exaggerated, I don't know, because it was like just top of my head what I thought. But I do like this film a lot. So maybe that's true. Again, I would have to really sit down and think about it more thoroughly. I did just say it last night. But I like this film a lot. I do recommend it. I'm not going to go into spoilers. I think you should go see this film. And if you've liked this review, I'm Grant Burton. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at @the_Grant Burton, where you can get my early thoughts and impressions on Twitter whenever I post them there. And of course, you can follow me on Letterboxd as well, where I post some written content now. And of course, subscribe to my channel, the most important thing. Subscribe to my channel if you like this content, because then you will get more content like it. The more subscribers I get, the more content I can make. It's really encouraging, and I appreciate any sort of support you want to give me. Until next time though, thanks for watching.